all you at home, and to you guys here in the studio. Welcome back to Black Sheep and Bad Apples. I'm your host, Lauren O'Brien. And tonight, while we have lost one of our fellow co-hosts, two of them tonight actually, Joe Daisy, shout out to you. Love you, baby.
Out.
We're
Joe
always
Daisy.
thinking about you.
JD.
And Sam is also not going to be here tonight, unfortunately, but I do have the pleasure of sharing this fucking room with two gentlemen. Our producer and co-host, Shawn Hill, over here at Fourth Corner.
Mm-hmm. And watch your tone of voice, gentleman.
Sorry. Not gentleman, just feral man. And then we're also joined tonight with Marcus Quintana. How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. What's up,
What's
y'all?
up, man? How you feeling about tonight?
We'll see how this goes, It's
We're
been a
gonna
while since
see.
I've been on a poet podcast, so.
Yeah. Well, welcome. I'm excited to have you guys, and it is just us three tonight. So, tonight we're going to be taking a little journey, talking about a college. Oh, actually, you're right, Marcus. I forgot something. Because it is season 6, baby! Insert air horn here, Sean. Fran. And in dedication to us writing things sober and delivering them in various states of inebriation, we are going to do a little shot of tequila. So, here's to you guys at home.
Salute, guys.
Here's to you guys here in the studio, boys. Some tasty tequila.
Oh, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why
Knew
I
I was
opted.
wrong when I
That's why I
brought
opted to
tequila.
drink half of mine now because I still have stories to tell.
Oh, we're gonna roll with this.
This is such great content for
Season 6.
for episode 1.
So, starting with new Bad Apples.
So tonight we're going to be talking about a college that was established a long time ago by a religious fundamentalist, and that college is still around today. The college was later turned into a university that still exists in kind of more or less the same religious capacity, but we're gonna get into a little bit more of the details about the capacity in which it exists. The college was later turned. Oh, read that line. It for a long time had held its reputation for being like the most intolerant and unwilling to change. It dug its heels at the sight of any kind of change. It just hated changing tradition, especially the religious traditions. So tonight, our rabbit hole that we're going down will take us into the fundamentalist Protestant Bob Jones and his university. Bob Jones University.
Do you think they called him BJ?
I really hope they did. I don't think they did.
Just because.
I think Bob is already a
if
nickname.
it's a religious thing and they're like, "Hey, BJ," and he's like, "That's not allowed."
You can't do
It's
that.
like, "No, Bob," and he's like, "Yeah, what's up?"
Yeah.
They're like, "Damn, dude."
Yeah, and it kind of heralds itself, and like it did and still does, as like one of the last bastions of morality in the collegiate and academic world. So without further ado, I would like to start us off with a bit of a biography. Robert Reynolds Jones Sr., the founder, grew up as the 11th child out of 12. Born to William Alexander Jones and Georgia Ann Creel Jones in 1883, he grew up in a very religious house. His father, who was referred to as Alex Jones, was a very devout Methodist, while his mother considered herself a primitive Baptist. And as just like a little short sidebar, a primitive Baptist, because I didn't know what it meant, was essentially a very like conservative Calvinist organization of the Christian faith, and it really focused on like family-oriented and family-integrated worship. It's kind of like the focus on the family kind of things, if you guys remember those.
Okay.
And these same types of Protestants also practiced foot washing, which I thought was very interesting.
Practiced foot washing?
Yeah, so like the primitive Baptists tried to like.
I mean, I practiced that as well.
They wash feet of other people.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was like, I wash my feet.
And so it's, I believe it's a way to like connect with the community, but I don't really know a whole lot about it because I'm not super. But it is like a way of being charitable, I guess. But I don't know how many homeless people they wash the feet of. So it's an interesting concept at the very least. Alex Jones and his family were poor, and he worked on a farm in Dale County, Alabama. The Joneses' unmarried children, including Robert, often worked on the farm and helped provide their dad, often helped their dad sell vegetables door to door. His family struggled to put food on the table, obviously, but Alex Jones is noted as being quite the skilled farmer. As the family grew, they would later move to Dothan, Alabama. Dothan? I don't know. To find more opportunities for work. This is where Robert Reynolds Jones, hereafter referred to as Bob Jones, would begin his schooling. But he would also start showing the signs of a great career as a pastor or preacher or whatever. Again, I'm not religious. I don't know. And I don't know what the difference is. Don't care to look it up. So it's
I'm sure
there
they
it
were
is.
just saying he was really active in church.
Yeah.
Already.
And as I mentioned, when he was young, he attended church with his family frequently, and around age 11, he was officially converted and baptized. His family would frequently force him to speak in front of guests in their home, reciting the Bible verses in scripture his father forced him to memorize.
So they set him up to be a pastor or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
and
you were going to tell scripture to people out loud.
that's really what it feels like. It feels like it was...
molded him completely.
Yeah, and like his dad, Alex Jones, was like a strict disciplinarian. And like, I don't have evidence of that, but it does sound like he was kind of molded into being what he is. And also, again, these people are very, it's the 1883 when he's born, so this is not even hitting the 1900s, and everybody was racist back then. Like, even the nicest person that you ever met just hated black people for no reason.
And where is this taking place? Do you know?
Right now, this is in Dothan, Alabama.
Alabama. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So they're
1800s, they're like...
They're even more racist.
They're, yeah.
And at first, Bob was a nervous and self-conscious public speaker. His stage fright was terrible. And he's even quoted as having been said, quote, "I did whatever my father said to do, but when he told me, 'Say the speech,' I suffered agony that nobody could possibly know." And I give it that little bit of like, flourish, but I think he's a strict disciplinarian. But unfortunately for the entire fucking world, Bob Jones's oration skills grew, and he shook off his stage fright. He even managed to become the Sunday school superintendent at around 12, and held his first revival meeting at his, and I quote, his home church. And somewhere in this time, it's amazing, right?
That's insane.
Supervisor at Sunday school.
Yeah, he's literally watching over all the kids that are younger than him.
Yeah.
And God, it's just... And it was around this time that our little Bobby began truly exhibiting the qualities of a great orator. The more he spoke to people, the more skill he gained at professing the capital T truth. He's even reported as having converted over 60 people in a single week to the path of the Lord. Again, when he's like 11, 12, 13. Like, it's crazy, this guy.
That boy must have had like a way with words, articulate as fuck, to be able to have that kind of pull on people.
He sounds like the devil.
Insane.
He sounds like the devil. Like, he could just convince anybody of anything. It's crazy.
Well, and in the 1800s, I mean...
Yeah, that's true. You didn't really have to do
you
much.
wanked off tonight?
Yeah.
Better come to God.
Better come to God.
Or you're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like...
People were a lot.
An 11-year-old tells you that, you might be more prone to believe it at that time. You're like, damn, this innocent kid.
And I didn't even think about that, but yeah, the shock of being preached at by this young child in the street that's crazy.
Yeah, just imagine. I mean, it just shows you the intellectual level of people at that time, where they were actually able to look at someone that young and be like, wait,
I think
he's
he
able to
right.
articulate like that? Definitely.
He sounded like he'd been to college.
Yeah.
Bob Jones was a flaming hot rising star in the southern world of Christian revivalist preachers. And around 13, he created his own church. And to be fair, it wasn't so much of a church, but it was like what I can imagine is like sticks and leaves and shit assembled in like a treehouse kind of fashion. Like a really shitty thing. But that's where he would give his sermons. And he eventually attracted a congregation of 54 members.
Wow.
So he was pretty good at preaching, and he was even documented at 12 years old as giving a, quote, spirited 20-minute defense of the Populist Party while standing on a dry goods box, a spirited speech rather, while standing on a dry goods box in front of a Dothan drugstore, end quote. And so he's just standing.
He was soapboxing.
He's just standing. Standing on a soapbox telling all these people about
And
God.
literally got 54 people to just go out
50.
there and be like,
Like, I think he...
just look
Hell
at
yeah,
it.
brother.
And, like, it does seem like something maybe his father may have, like, coached him to do, but also I think at this point he was just so, like, not brainwashed, that's the wrong word. He was, like, his dad really put a mindset into him about
most
how to
definitely.
speak to people,
I
you
mean,
know?
If you really think about it, most boys automatically look up to their fathers.
Mm.
And if he's shoving this down your throat, well,
That's
hey, I'm gonna run and I'm gonna excel with this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
definitely took off though with it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and the funny thing is, it was there at this Dothan drugstore on the soapbox that he was, as the Hollywood type call it, discovered. So, like, all the cards are playing just like, this dude had no other fucking choice in life other than to become this. It's a little bit sad, actually. A Methodist missionary, Dr. Charles Jefferson Hammett, discovered Bob Jones Sr.'s great gift for gab and allowed Bob Jones to to board with him, rather. And at this time, Bob was also like enrolled at a seminary school. I don't really know exactly what that is, but Malilu Seminary was where he was enrolled at this time. And after this, he entered into the Southern College of Greensboro, Alabama, where he paid his bills by preaching. He eventually left college without a degree to help his 2 widowed sisters. At 17, he lost both his mother and his father. It was 5 years later that he would meet his first wife, Bernice Sheffield. Their marriage was short-lived, however, as Bernice caught tuberculosis and died nearly 10 months later. Then, 3 years after that, Bob married a woman named Mary Gaston Stolwerk, which, goddamn, that is a fucking name if I've ever heard one. 3 years after Mary Gaston Stolwerk, just like, Jesus Christ. 3 years after their marriage, the bouncing baby, Robert Reynolds Jones Jr., was born. And this was in 1911. So there's a little bit of a timeline we're kind of working up to here.
Okay.
And Bob loved this kid, but Bob also loved him some God, and so he continued preaching. During this part of the 20s and 30s, a huge controversy had kicked off in the religious world, and it was sparked over how to interpret God's word and how the teachings of the Lord should operate in society at large. You see, the fundamentalist modernist movement was a huge issue for people of the church. Fundamentalists thought that the modernist Protestants and the Catholics had misinterpreted or rejected certain aspects of the Bible. But the true issue is that they thought the fundamentalists carried a belief called, biblical inerrancy. This school of thought focused on the idea that the scripture was fucking perfect in every way. It had to be interpreted exactly as it was written because God had written it like that for a reason. The Bob Jonesian style of this idea was that the original texts, written in Greek and Hebrew, were the only uncorrupted and uncorruptible ones.
That's weird because God didn't write the Bible.
Exactly what I was going to say, man.
A whole bunch of people.
Yeah,
did.
he had man write the Bible for him.
Yeah.
Which means, man is not going to just sit there and be like, oh, yeah. Oh, that's great.
I played the telephone game. You know, but it's to be that's exactly what God had written. No, that's what John wrote.
Yeah,
and that's what Moses wrote. And
I'm
that's
quite
what,
religious, but I've never drawn completely off of the Bible.
And I want to be clear here because Bob Jones doesn't necessarily think that God wrote the Bible, but he thinks that through all the different authors that God moved through them and thus created something that can't be corrupted. And so in a way, he's kind of he's just really focused on that God, through the hands wrote it to be exactly
to project his message.
Yeah, and so these original texts were the inerrant ones, as they say. The ones that were just perfect; they could not be adulterated. Although the King James Bible would work just perfectly fine, apparently, throughout their church. It was allowed, but it wasn't held to the highest of authority, because it was a translation, and that's blasphemy, basically. So, again, the fundamentalists saw modernist interpretations of the Bible as homogenization and the watering down, and even the corruption of Protestant beliefs and Christian beliefs. During this time, modernists gained a new title, liberal theology, because they thought the strict interpretations, they could be just loosened a little bit. Their radically liberal interpretations of the Bible focused on things like considering modern interpretations of the Bible, viewing the Bible through the lens of modern knowledge, such as science and ethics and things of the sort, and the ability to have your own personal reasoning, your own personal experience, and your own personal interpretation of it. These were fucking radical ideas back in the day. And so, broad stroke, the story looked like the modernists wanted a personal relationship with God, and that, being that it was like the turn of the century, these people wondered if they could enter into a holy partnership without all the rigid rules. Maybe they could relax some of the rules, some of the ideas in light of modern discoveries. And this would allow modernists the opportunity to re-examine certain aspects of the Bible's teachings and gain the interpretation that would put them closer to God, all the while looking at the ethics of what they were doing. And needless to say, Bob Jones hated this idea. You see, the split between these two groups happened in their early 20s, and Bob grew more and more concerned about what he saw as religious liberalism. He also saw higher education institutions like, colleges and universities. He saw them like leaving God behind and becoming more secular. And this just greatly concerned him because many people would go on learning, many people would go to hell for learning things like evolution. It was in 1924 that Bob had a conversation with a friend during a Bible conference, which I don't know what that is. It sounds incredibly boring to me.
Conference.
Like it
for the Bible.
Bible.
Just a discussion. It's just basically like what we're doing here.
Okay, cool. Because
just a nice
Jesus
discussion
Christ.
and
yeah. Well,
exchange of what our perceived our perceptions are on what we're talking about.
Yeah, and so Bob was at one of these conferences where one of his friends said, quote, "If schools and colleges don't quit teaching evolution as a fact, we're going to become a nation of atheists," end quote. Let me ask you guys this. Are either of you guys atheists?
No.
Cool. So maybe he's wrong. His concern was if colleges weren't going to teach the right way to God, the modernists were going to pick apart and stain and stitch back together their interpretations of the Bible. All of these people, in essence, were desecrating the perfect art of God. And Bob saw the future of the United States as a modern Sodom and Gomorrah. And this greatly bothered him. So he set about creating an institution of higher learning that put God first. And not only God first, but the real interpretation of God.
Well, I mean,
harsh.
It's
the real.
It's
that's a fuck right there, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So Bob himself wasn't a college graduate, but he was fucking determined. He felt it was his moral obligation to God to create an institution with a capital H, him first. His son, Bob Jones Jr., was 16 when Bob Jones opened Bob Jones College in 1927. And that was in Panama City, and there was 88 students there. So, like, he's still picking up traction, you know what I mean? This is still 20 years later, but he's just momentum all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to even ask this, but you did say that it's still continuing to this day.
It is still going on, and we haven't even gotten to some of the bad parts of the story.
Holy shit!
Yeah, it's
almost 100 years going.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So
this
he started out soapboxing with 54.
Like any of this is going any better.
Well, and what I want to highlight is there's a dynasty going on.
No,
and,
most
and,
definitely.
Yeah, and so we've got Bob Jones Sr. and then Bob Jones Jr., and he was getting educated the right way. Like his father before him, Bob Jones was very interested in getting his kids educated in the world of Christ. About 2 years before before his college opened, when Junior was 10, his father gave him 50 missionary biographies, which would probably bother any other 10-year-old. But the Bob Jones apple didn't fall far from the tree at all. Junior was voracious about reading this shit. And from everything that I've read, he loved reading everything about the Bible and biblical work. And it was in 1931 that Bob Jones Jr. graduated from, where else? Bob Jones College.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, of course.
That was easy.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, thanks, Dad.
Yeah, it was like, what, 6 months, Miko?
Yeah, for real. You got a fucking PhD? What the fuck, dude?
Yeah, you're set, Miko,
Yeah. So after barely surviving the Great Depression, because again, we're still in like the 1920s and 30s, Bob Jones eventually had to move his college. And the Bob Jones University website describes this time like this. I quote, "Amidst the sand, sawgrass, and pine forest, Dr. Jones Jr. and the Board of Trustees broke ground for the college on December 1st, 1926 in Bay County, Florida." By the way, I don't know why I'm doing that accent. I'm just going to keep going.
It was I.
The following... Jesus Christ.
Hold on. Let me get the corona cough out.
The following September, Bob Jones College opened with 88 students. Of primary importance was the daily chapel service, which Bob Jones Sr. determined to keep hot with fervent preachings from the Bible. Before long, Dr. Bob became famous for his chapel sayings, concise encapsulations of spiritual truths. Although a lack of funds ultimately forced Bob Jones College from its Florida campus, God moved it to a location more accessible to its financially strapped students. They ended up landing in Cleveland.
They can't afford to get here. Move it closer.
Yeah. They ended up... I'm just going to drop it. They ended up... And I'm still quoting their website, by the way. They ended up landing in Cleveland, Tennessee in 1933. Oh, no, actually, this is my writing, not theirs. And then record scratch, fast forward 13 years later in Cleveland, Tennessee, Bob Jones College is the largest liberal arts college in the state.
Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy. Just from it.
Wait. Liberal arts, you said, right?
Just for clarity, because I didn't actually know about this either. I'd like to add that liberal arts is a term used to describe the three basic tenets of higher education. That's science, art, and mathematics.
You said liberal.
Liberal arts. I know, right? Because they hate liberals. They hate liberals.
Liberal arts.
No, I know. That's why I looked it up too. I was like, wait, Bob Jones,
okay, you got
this
me a
doesn't
little fucked up.
This doesn't sound like the story at all.
Okay.
I went to a liberal arts college. Which one? Bob Jones Religious University.
It's like,
I thought you went to music
Bob
school.
Jones Religious University of Liberal Arts.
yeah.
Oh man.
Oh shit.
Bob Jones would hate being called
if
that.
I ever heard it. No,
They have art
from what I heard before. Goddamn.
So
They have art class and drawing, but instead of having nude models, they have fully clothed from head to toe.
So Bob Jones College was able to break ground and begin building the university that would teach from the actual gospel of God. And what made it great was that the entire college was about really focusing on the spiritual truths one could glean from the Bible and from Bob Jones Sr. In fact, here's a quote from one of Bob's spiritual truths. It's never right to do wrong in order to get a chance to do right. And that seems pretty concise. And it's a little contrived maybe, but it still makes a good point with good intentions.
Definitely.
So I'd like to show you guys, or tell you guys about another one of his spiritual truths. And for yeah.
I hear your voice.
And just for context on this quote, Bob Jones hated alcohol, which is important because quote, I would rather see a saloon on every corner than a Catholic in the White House. I would rather see an N-word as president, end quote.
Huh.
Yeah. And then here's another one. Quote, I believe some of the leaders of the World Council of Churches and the Pope are in conscious service to the Antichrist. All of the popes are demon-possessed.
Oh.
What in the fuck? I'm sorry, I don't know what radio. This shit go, no, what?
Yeah. It's fucking batshit crazy.
Yes, that is...
I didn't realize who he thought God's children were.
I didn't realize we were dealing with such a contradictory person.
And like I wouldn't take
like,
shots at a regular
about God, and you're gonna be like, oh yeah. By the way, like I'd rather have everything like motherfucking niggers over there. What? What?
Like,
are you serious? Like,
dude. And
It's like, okay, I don't think that word was ever in the Bible.
and there's just something about it where like he hates everybody. We're gonna get into that a little bit, but he just like he just takes such a wide swing at the Pope and like at the Catholics, and like it's crazy. So we're gonna talk a little bit about Bob Jones Jr. because there is a little dynasty we're gonna be working on here. And Jr. had attended school and was a good student. However, as young men do, he became fascinated and good at, by all accounts, acting. He fucking loved to act. And as he was just so good at acting that even Hollywood made offers to him. And his father didn't like that at all because it made him anxious because, I assume it makes him anxious because Hollywood is full of homos and sinners. I don't know. But anyway, Bob Jones Jr. did actually end up taking part in some writing and acting in Hollywood films. Jones Jr. was he was like actually kind of successful for a little while. Like it's kind of hard to believe that his dad would let him. But like between 1933 and 1945, he performed 4 times a year a one-man show he did called Curtain Calls, where he portrayed, quote, 7 or 8 Shakespearean characters accompanied by classic literature, or classic music, rather. I don't know why I said literature. Those words are different.
Wait, so Shakespeare's allowed in this?
Shakespeare's allowed.
Shakespeare read the real word.
It's weird.
The whole aspect of what he's trying to portray sounds like an oxymoron, bro. From when he's going around doing like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, but that's not at all what he's actually.
It's almost the antithesis to what you're doing.
Yeah, it's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, like one thing that I'm not going to cover in here a little bit, but like in their student handbook, which we can still find online. Like I encourage you guys at home to listen or to go and watch it. But there's no fucking dancing at this school. That might have changed in the last few years, but like I read part of the 2017, I believe, manual. I could be wrong about that date a little bit, but it was like 2017 or something like that. And it's like, no dancing. It's too sexy. You're gonna get everybody hard.
You can show your ankles.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I was about to say.
So between 1933 and 47, Jones Jr. would help out around the college, serving as acting president for over 10 years before finally having the reins passed to him in 47. He was also making time to find love. In 1938, Bob Jones University finally moved to where it stands today, Greenville, South Carolina. That same year, Jones Jr. met and married Fannie Mae Holmes. A year later,
I bet she had a Fannie.
Fannie Mae Holmes.
Fannie Hill.
Did you guys know that means something different in Britain? The fanny's the pussy in Britain.
Okay, well, then either way, like I said, I bet
remember,
she got a Fannie.
remember the book I brought up on the history of porn, Fannie Hill?
Oh, yeah. For sure. And so a year after they moved to college, or a year after he got married, rather, on August 8th, 1939, a bouncing baby, Robert Reynolds Jones III, was fucking born. Wow. So now there's fucking 3 of them, guys. There's 3.
That's a name. Robert Reynolds Jones Jr. I don't even know if I can say
hard.
It right. Robert Reynolds Jones.
Oh yeah, fuck that.
This guy.
I don't know. I may have already had too much tequila or fucking beer, but yeah, that's definitely a tongue twister.
Bob Jones Sr.'s dad was probably just the biggest asshole in the world and was like, you know what, everything's going to be hard for him. I'm going to even give him a hard name. Like, you can't pronounce it. It's tongue twister.
Sorry, you say your name twice, and I'll let you go off on this DWI.
Yeah. And so Bob Jones Sr., as we've kind of learned, and I think grown to love, has vehemently loved God. But as we try to get into Bob Jones's head a little bit here, I'd like to use some advice he gave us for this specific moment. Very poetically, I might add, he said, quote, "What you love and what you hate reveal who you are."
Yeah, okay.
Pretty good.
Can't argue with that.
I like it.
Yeah. I'm going to college next year.
It really does. And let me be clear about something. You guys know like the coexist stickers on the back of people's bumpers?
Yes.
Yeah. Bob Jones would have fucking hated those.
Yeah.
Here's another quote from Bob. Quote, "Tolerance is a form of cowardice. We should be appalled at the thought of homosexuality and adulterous relationships. We should be upset when we hear of teenage pregnancies and unwed mothers. But instead of being concerned, upset, or angry, we seem to accept these things and many other sins as normal behaviors. The Bible clearly states otherwise. It is nothing but a deviation from scriptural principles we are to govern our lives with. There is no normalcy in sin. The excuse of personal standards and convictions is not legitimate. A big difference exists between what God clearly points out in the scripture and what we believe based on convictions. These are moral sins, and they are violations of clear scriptural principles, right versus wrong, immorality versus purity, and unholiness versus holiness. No questions, concerns, or reasonings are sufficient when God clearly instructs us on how to live."
I'm not gonna lie. I feel like this guy sounds kind of like a religious Hitler.
He kind of does. Yeah.
It's
It's a good observation.
Someone you would like see taking in. He has a way with words and is able to catch ignorant people, of course. So he's running with it.
And one of the things I actually didn't think about was like he started rising to power at the same time Hitler did. And so like there's a whole lot of parallels between these two.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so Bob Jones Sr., Jr., and the third were all at different times involved with politics and in various different forms. I really wish we had the time to talk about all the politics they got into.
Speaking of politics.
Yeah. But they're all quite the story. Like that, from abortion to civil rights, homosexuality, the university's founders and presidents have worked extremely hard to associate the name of Republicans to the God-fearing churchgoer. It'd be funny if it weren't so sad that the Bobs and various other religious churches began doing nearly the same thing at the same time, and they often worked together. Needless to say, Bob Jones had a lot of issues with the changing world. He and his son, and eventually his grandson, all saw the world as it modernized and worried about how life would be in the future. Even though Bob had a sort of like rigorous doomsday-esque style to the Bobs rather, had the style of their preaching, Bob Sr. was described as having, he enjoyed politics, and being that the other Bobs would eventually get involved, you could say that they were too. And I think it's kind of a dad thing at this point, like... He's very
just following. It's like we were talking about earlier. To be honest with you, it's molding.
Yeah, very much so.
Complete molding. As a father, you try to mold your children to the best possible beings you see fit. So everything they're drawing is just off of you.
Yeah,
definitely. So you know that shit's just been passed down generation to generation, and it's never been broken because they've never had another kind of either a male figure that ran with them or that could possibly contradict what they actually saw, but more than likely it's just...
And we'll see a little bit later that I don't think that it's like there's a hardcore hate in these guys' heart. I feel that these guys have this really strong hate within themselves, and it's a little disheartening to get to understand that these guys got to run an entire university. Like, people graduated with degrees from this place, and these people are running it,
spreading that ignorance.
And it's wild to me that something like that still exists, and we're going to get into how it exists a little bit later. But I think for now we're going to go ahead and take a short little break, and we're going to come back.
And we're going to take another shot.
Oh yeah,
because when Marcus is here, we got to celebrate.
Apparently, Marcus is bent on getting us drunk, like Alex Jones was during the Joe Rogan podcast a couple days ago.
Oh,
it was
there was a Joe Rogan podcast going on?
And Joe Rogan was straight up, he was like, dude, I'm doing Sober October. Get that fucking away from me. So cheers to you guys at home.
Goddamn, we hitting November soon.
cheers to you guys here in the studio. We'll see you on the other side.
You guys have a good one.
Clink.
You're back with QVC Radio. We've got a great new product for you. We're talking to Stephen Corral.
Hey, y'all. Are you tired of digging with your handheld shovels? I'm Slippery Steve, and these are Slippery Steve's steel-toed shovel shoes. A tough shovel for your steel foot. I designed them, I use them, and I sleep next to them. They come in both left foots and right foots.
So, Slippery Steve, how did you come up with the design?
Well, you see, I broke my foot in '82, and I was having a hard time walking. So one day I devised a plank with some string on my foot, and it felt so good. I went into the garden and I started digging up my prize-winning turnips, big as a gopher. And I got the plank stuck in the dirt, and that's how the idea hit me, like Jesus' wrath.
Wow, that's amazing. So tell us a little bit about how it works.
Well, you see, you take your shoes and your socks off like this, and you undo the 27 clasps along the boot, and you seal yourself in the Kevlar ballistic laces, and the lead-lined clasp will seal the shoe to your foot snugly. It's as simple as 1, use the instruction manual to strap them suckers on your feet, and 2, you're done. Just start kicking the absolute shit out of dirt, and it's all organic, pesticide-free, and fair trade.
Fascinating. I might get some for my garden.
You should.
And where can folks find your product?
Well, you see, I got my conversion van parked over out on Cromwell and 16th next to Tammy's Adult Novelty Shopping. For now, and you can find me in the abandoned parking lot across the street, or you call in an order at 555-0900 during the day, preferably before 6 p.m., maybe after 5, and the dark web, or you can send me an email. You can send me email at Slippery Steve's steel-toed shovel shoes at darkweb.net. I also got, you can just look for Slippery Steve on the dark web, but that's other stuff. And for a limited time, this is exciting. For a limited time, I'm bringing back my original design, the classic 82, but in steel.
And where can you ship your product?
Oh, no, ma'am.
Oh, that's real close. No,
ma'am. I don't use the quote unquote mail system. You got to come pick up. It's only pickup. I don't deliver at all. I don't. No, I can't trust the mail system. Okay, ma'am, since they stole my license and they couldn't even prove that I was drinking.
Still too close.
Okay. And I was on my own property, and hell, I don't think killing gophers is illegal yet. And I hate pants. It's not no, I don't deliver. I don't. Call first so I can put on pants. So I'll see you at the van, yeah? And remember, Slippery Steve's steel-toed shovel shoes, the classic 82s.
We're back. I'm Loren.
Oh, too bad.
That was a bad segue back into this podcast, I think.
Goddamn, my bad. I was trying to go a little.
I just think maybe yelling might not be the best way to capture our listeners' ears.
Silky smooth.
If you at home are listening and were offended, I apologize. Please do not send me emails.
But do.
And on our break, we were talking a little bit about our ladies and trying to get some trying to what's the term for it? Trying to get the demographic of drug users. That was what we were really focused on during our break. And so
wait, what?
We talked about it. You guys may not remember, but drug users are definitely a part of our next demographic. We're going to be putting stamps on baggies of various drugs. And
get your keys of Black Sheep and Bad Apples.
Get your keys of BS and BA.
And it's really a box of whatever comes. Yeah, a little bit of heroin, a little bit of cocaine.
Honestly, it's kind of just
some marijuana,
We try to spoil you, just give you a little bit of stuff that we think you'll like and stuff we know you'll like.
I don't know if you guys can actually tell what Lauren's face looks like at this point, but he was winking a lot at you guys.
I was winking at you, Marcus.
Oh, God.
Oh, he started blushing.
Yeah. I'm not even going to lie. Lauren's kind of cute.
This is BS and BA, not MDA.
Oh, sorry, Sean. You're kind of cute, too.
Anyway, so needless to say,
watch your PDA, bro.
Bob Jones would have hated this conversation.
No one told me this shit, homo. I was trying to get some chuncho in
So, yeah, I could see Bob not being happy.
No,
about
he
this.
would. Everything about this conversation he would hate.
I wonder what his detention was like.
I don't want to know.
I don't think he would like me here either.
Anyway, on par with the religious teachings, they were kind of a brand of Christians that felt the basic tenets of the Bible, and thus all of Christianity were being corrupted and attacked, just like physically attacked. And he worried that worry lent itself to fear about how much the, quote, liberals would end up legislating religion out of the country. He believed that humans were basically depraved by nature, and moreover, he thought that liberals and Democrats wanted to get as far away from God as possible, and by doing so, bring about the end of the world.
He thought liberals...
Bro, you was straight trying to say Democrats.
Democrats, yeah.
I heard that shit.
I get into a lot of like right-wing propaganda sites, and you hear demon rats all the time, and so it's just something that goes through my head now because apparently I'm sick.
So he thought that liberals were one of the categories of people trying to get the furthest away from God, Meanwhile, he has a liberal arts college.
We're Democrats, bro.
Democrats, dude. Yeah.
Oh.
It's a tough thing too, because it's like, I mean, he's not wrong. We want to get church out of schools and out of government and stuff like that. But the point that he gets to is like, they're trying to make it illegal to be a Christian. It's like, nobody fucking wants to do that. That goes against the Constitution, which is a thing that I think all of us as a collective can more or less agree upon.
Well, maybe you shouldn't start a college called a liberal arts college.
Right?
You're still getting liberal arts wrong, but I appreciate the way you're using it.
But I'm just saying, like, it's very the communication thing.
Yeah,
there.
let's mind fuck people.
Liberals are away from Jesus. That's why I started my liberal arts religious college.
Yeah.
It's like, are you trying to attract people?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think you're trying to...
that was what he was doing.
No. Wait. Think about this on a fucking whole nother level. They're smart as fuck. They're like, let me get the most fucked people and change their mind.
Oh, shit. I didn't even think about that, actually.
Oh.
Because that is like a big part of what they're trying to do is constantly convert people and constantly bring them in. Because if they can convert them, they can bring them into their university and make money off them.
Exactly, bro. Wow.
You got some insight, Marcus. That's why I fucks with you. That's why. That's why.
We just hit the Twilight Zone, people.
So his strict ideology encouraged just the strongest Sabbath observance. And actually, it might not have been the strongest, but he also really encouraged academic learning through Christ, although not the Catholic one, strict celibacy, and a pure lifestyle. He kind of hated feminism, alcohol, homosexuals, abortions, black people, Catholics, the Baptists, the Catholics again, and just like a whole list of other people we're not going to be able to get into because there's just so much Mexicans. So many people he hated. And it gets back into that what you love and what you hate reveal stuff about you. You know,
that's what I kind of find funny because the more and more that this podcast keeps going along with this topic, and it just seems like his actual aspect of where he's at is just completely contradicting his word. Like, he's just contradicting what he's saying completely.
And we're actually gonna kind of spoilers end the podcast with a quote about how he's like contradicting himself and how like what he's saying you can interpret one way or the other, and there's certain interpretations of it that lead to not promoting hate crimes against people. And I think as a whole, most religions promote a sense of community and loving one another, charitable action and stuff like that. And I really think that, as you were saying, there's like this
So, but what you're saying though is that he later on in it, but like how much later on was it?
We'll get into that actually in the podcast tonight. We'll get into that tonight actually. Because it is a very interesting story.
He was like slight spoiler.
Because you're saying it's later on.
Yeah, well, and it's a slight spoiler because I'm saying later on
do this.
But Bob Jones wasn't just a religious zealot hyper focused on creating a college to weave the fundamental Christian movement into higher learning. He was also a super big fucking capital R racist. And it's probably something that you guys picked up on because I've said it explicitly. But Bob Jones University, from day one, it accepted every kind of person from all racial backgrounds. They had Asian people, and they just had a bunch of other ethnic groups into his college. But they did have a big rule: no fucking black people. And I mean that in two different ways. So, for instance,
Because they dance?
African Americans weren't allowed into the school for a very long time, and there was absolutely no interracial dating here.
Oof.
So, like, literally, black people weren't allowed.
The time period you're talking about, African Americans.
They didn't.
This isn't like the 40s and 50s, though. Like, it's ridiculous.
No, bro, come on, 40s and 50s, bro.
Civil rights movement, all that type of stuff.
People
like,
still didn't give a flying fuck.
And the Deep South, a white woman don't marry a black guy. Or
whatever. Interracial was completely frowned upon. Like,
let's get back into this because I think you guys are going to really like this next part.
It's going to sound horrible.
Bob had an issue when it came to what people thought about him in his college and that he set up, in so much that he and his college weren't racist, you guys. They were following scripture. This is a quote from an address he gave over the radio on April 17th, 1960. While residents in the Greenville area were getting ready for their Sunday morning church, the address titled, quote, "Is segregation scriptural?" And this was spoken by a goddamn 77-year-old Bob Jones Sr., and this played through their radios. And here is a little excerpt from that. Now, notice, this is a very important verse. The 26th verse of the 17th chapter of the Act of Apostles, quote, and hath made of one blood all nations. Hath made of one blood is very important. We'll get back to that later. Hath made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on the face of the earth. In some of the original manuscripts, the word blood is not in there, but it's not important anyhow, because the thoughts are the same. Quote, and hath made of one blood all nations for men to dwell on the face of the earth. End quote. But do not stop there. Quote, and hath determined the times for he appointed, and the bounds of their habitation. Now what does that say? That says that God Almighty fixed the bounds for their habitation. That is clear as anything ever was. End quote. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of that nice little Bible verse he corrupts?
He's saying God created one blood, and by that meaning the color of your skin.
Well,
and
I think he ignores that entirely. Well, actually, I
was like, there's
was
God's blood of people, and then there's not God's blood of people, which means
very much so.
You're either the child of God, and you have the blood for that, or you're just some random other animal, or however you want to really get deep with it.
Yeah, they definitely would call them animals.
With that, yeah, that's why I'm like, in the racist type of thing, he's like, in his translation, he's like, that means that black people are animals and not the blood of God.
I mean, that was
and
a
like
common perception back in the day, though, to be honest with you.
I mean, slaves were still a thing at that.
Black people back in the day were commonly fucking compared to apes.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Like, commonly. That shit was not shied upon at all. And that's a whole nother fucking different thing. But to actually get to what y'all was saying was, I mean, this guy literally, and I will continue to say this throughout the fucking podcast, he sounds like a fucking...
He's an
like religious
idiot.
Hitler.
He's a religious Hitler and a gigantic idiot. But he makes this. He stumbles into this like oration skill. He just accidentally finds it and creates the empire, and not necessarily an empire, but he creates this massive university.
No, but he's still. But to what I asked earlier is he's still on. He's still to this day. His word is still manipulating people. And
we're going to get into that.
Absolutely fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, we're going to get into that a little bit. And so one could argue, as they very much did back then, that Jones and his university weren't racist. They were just listening to Scripture's instructions. Excuse me, Sean. You can cut that out.
Probably not going
to. Or leave it in. But in our day and age, you can't really argue that he was listening to Scripture's instructions when he said shit like this. Quote, a Negro is best when he serves at the table. When he does that, he's doing what he knows how to do best. And the Negroes who have ascended to positions in government, in education, this sort of thing, I think you'll find by and large have a strong strain of white blood in them. Now, I'm not a racist, and this school is not a racist institution. I cannot stress that enough. But what I say is purely for what I have been taught and what I have been able to study in the teachings of the Scripture. End quote.
Huh.
So again, he's not racist. However,
he's just ignorant as fuck.
Well,
but he's like,
well, hear me out.
They're doing their best serving the white people.
Exactly what it is. He's so ignorant as fuck. He said it himself. What I've learned from the Scriptures and from what I've learned, what I've seen myself.
So,
no shit.
What fucking Bible are you reading? It doesn't say that at all.
Like, I'm sorry.
Now, again, Jones isn't a racist. However, I did find that in the 1920s, as his college was starting in Florida, Jones Sr. had taken contributions from the kind gentleman over at the Ku Klux Klan. There were rumors that Jones was a member of the KKK. However, it is widely regarded that he was never a member, but he did side with some of their positions in the 20s. A publication from the El Paso Times in 1922 quotes James. No, this isn't. Yeah,
El Paso Times. That's where I'm from.
Yeah, quotes Jones is saying this, and I quote: "I'm not a member of the Ku Klux Klan," Mr. Jones said. "Colonel William J. Simmons, Imperial Wizard of the Klan, a former Methodist preacher, is a close personal friend of mine, and he approached me to join the Klan. He told me it was a patriotic organization and that it had never been party to lawlessness. I did not join." End quote. the parallels between some of those comments and what is going on today, I find unsettling, dude.
I'm
It is
not with
unsettling.
them, but you know, like I fucks with them, you know.
I didn't
Well,
join
they're
the,
just patriots.
I didn't join the Klan, but I did accept their money to support our college.
Yeah, fucking exactly.
And I don't
Like-
agree with them. They're just American patriots.
They're white people
It's
though.
it's so
You know,
crazy.
you're just like, whoa.
Bro.
So,
I don't agree with their things, but because they're white, I can accept their money to support me.
support me, exactly.
It's like-
So, for reasons that are probably abundantly clear, Bob Jones Sr. continued to fight to keep his school segregated even up until the era of the civil rights movement. Marcus, are you trying to cheers me?
I was trying to, bro, but
Well,
you was a little
here we go, doggy.
preoccupied.
Cheers.
So
Clink, Sean.
clank, clank.
Clink. Season
clink,
6,
clink,
episode
ain't nothing
1,
in
Bob
Sean's
Jones
glass,
University.
So he's lying,
Woo!
fool, I swear.
And cheers to you guys at home. Ugh. Woo! All
Yeah.
right.
I'm sorry, it's
So-
just you know, episode 1. I'm
Of season
assuming
6.
From season 6, baby. It's a good
Yeah,
start.
but you know, episode 1, we gotta
We gotta come hard, dude.
Bring
We gotta
it in.
bring it.
bring it in.
So, in the Bob Jones continued to fight to keep his school segregated even up until the era of the civil rights movement. In the Bob Jones University website about what's going on in the 60s, they just have this to say about the time. This is under the section entitled 1960s. Quote, in 1964, Bob Jones Jr. became chairman of the Board of Trustees, and Bob Jones III was elected as the university's vice president. So we can see the movement of the...
Dad's helping out
thing
the
here.
son, helping out the grandson. Like,
Yep.
you need a PhD. I created college. Everybody's good.
Yeah.
Just hate the blacks.
Continuing the quote, on January 16th, 1968, the Lord called Dr. Bob Jones Sr., the university founder, to meet his Savior after a lifetime of faithful service. He was 86 when he passed.
He was 86th.
He was 86. Ooh, good call.
Ah.
So one thing I want to note is that they called him Dr. Bob Jones Sr.
Dr.
You guys-
Bob
Can you
Jones.
guys guess where he got his degree? Where did he get his
oh
doctorate?
no. let me guess. Hold on.
Let me guess. And so the other thing that bothers me about this part of the story is that I really wanted to know if this motherfucker
what I'm
suffered.
saying, bro. That's why I said it when you said it the first time. Oh, his son happened to get a fucking college degree at this fucking bro.
Motherfucker, like,
bro.
stop.
Well, of course.
Stop playing.
Oh,
Stop
yeah.
playing. We all know what's going on
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
There's
I don't want to go to
nepotism.
college to get my doctorate. I'm
Yeah,
just
this
going to make a
motherfucker
college to
graduated
get my
to get a
doctorate.
doctorate. Yeah.
Shit.
And
You
then
was like,
I-
oh man, this nigga got a fucking doctorate, bro.
And then my kid got his PhD,
So the
and
thing-
then his kid got, and it's like, well, no shit, you.
Oh yeah. Hey, hold up. My son was just born. Fool, can he get his bachelor's real quick?
Yo,
It's a-
these, are
it's
the, these are the same guys that are like, dude, just go to college. It's not
It's
that
a
hard
lot
to get
easier
a
to
degree.
get pills when you are the doctor with the prescription pad. You
So-
know, like, doesn't mean you should become a doctor to
Yeah,
own a
that's what I'm saying.
prescription pad.
So we have a repetition of absolute ignorance being passed on, and the fact that this college is even accepted anymore in this fucking time.
Man, and one thing I want to say is, the thing about this story that really, really irked me was I looked deep and hard and tried to find out what happened to Dr. Bob Jones Sr. How did he die? How did he pass? I know he was 86.
Oh yeah.
But the unfortunate information is I don't know. But what I can say is I hope
Heart failure.
that it was painful.
No,
Fucking
honestly,
hope that it was painful.
Honestly, bro, he sounds like Hitler. He should have
Yeah.
died horribly.
Horribly. Now, we're going to steer a little bit away from the biography aspect of the episode to focus on the school, the founder, and the subsequent leaders that all followed and stayed on a similar path of basically preach God's love but hate the sinners. So, like, we've got an easy through line to see. But again, the people who created the school ran it were just complete weirdos. And the school itself had some fucking quirks. So it was originally in the 1930s when the IRS began offering nonprofit status to churches and schools. Bob Jones University was able to obtain one and held one for so many years. Cutting through all the extremely long and detailed story about the IRS and all this kind of bullshit, after the Supreme Court found segregation to be unconstitutional in 1954, all nonprofits had to begin admitting African American students if they were to keep their tax-exempt status.
Huh.
And just as a note, like one thing I want to...
You want to be
I
a...
guarantee you. I don't think you're going to have to tell me this, but I guarantee you that college went to the Supreme Court, tried to have a fucking fight against the fact that that's unconstitutional.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying from the from the actual fact that, yeah.
In
it's just interesting to me that you point out that to keep a non-profit, you had to be
more or less not racist.
Not racist in that. So, like, at a point in time, like, the government, if you will, was like, yo, you want to not pay us money, you have to allow, like, non-racism in your thing.
Yeah,
it's
you can't promote this kind of bullshit.
the government was trying to employ, in weird ways, non-racism at a point. Yeah. And things that would, like, not that they were like, you can't be racist by, well,
you can be racist at home.
You can be racist, but you got to profit off
Oh,
that.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
If you're going to be racist, you better be profiting off of that and be blatant about it. Yeah. Because if you're going to be hiding it behind the curtain, no. You got to, like, you got to be not like that. And that's interesting in, like, understanding of just American culture, if you will. Where at
how
a
our
point,
politics works.
At a point, there was literally the government employing that, like, racism we don't agree with, but if you're gonna do it, you better be profiting off it.
And we can't give you this kind of exemption.
We can't give you an exemption for racism, but if you're just gonna do it, then make a profit off it and do it and stuff. But you're like it's on your shirt cuff that you are a racist.
You are a racist institution. Yeah, and just like this is kind of a little tangent. But I do want to note, because I think it's very important for like what we're going to get into here in a little bit. Bob Jones wasn't like the first person to try to bring religion into politics. Before like the 1960s and 70s or so, the religious voting bloc of America wasn't really a thing.
No, I mean, Texas to this day is still a very, very religious state.
Yeah, and it's because of some of these new people that were kind of stepping onto the stage, and these people were new religious schools. People like Jerry Falwell, who created Liberty University. Paul Weyrich, who is most noted as creating the, quote, New Right. He also created the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, and coined the term moral majority. It was after the ruling of the Supreme Court that allowed that not allowing black people was racist at school. Like that was a racist thing. And it was after this that the IRS began inquiries to verify the tax-exempt status for all of these schools. And the ruling and subsequent inquiry, this really pissed off some of the leaders at Bob Jones University, and it also pissed off a lot of, quote, evangelical leaders, especially as the IRS began sending questionnaires to church-related segregation academies, including Falwell's own Lynchburg Christian School, inquiring about their racial policies. Falwell was furious, and this is quoting Falwell. In some states, it's easier to open a massage parlor than a Christian school, end quote. And I want to note that quote is from a Politico article entitled "The Real Origins of the Religious Right." This is an incredible article. If you're at home just listening to this podcast, please go and check it out. It's a little bit, it's really long, but it's an incredibly well written article about like the religious right and how they kind of merged this stuff into politics. And again, we're not going to cover a whole lot of that in the episode tonight.
You said it's easier to start a massage parlor than what?
It's easier to start a massage parlor. No, in some states, it's easier to open a massage parlor than a Christian school, because Christian schools were noted as being racist.
But I'm like, of course.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want a massage parlor in any state?
Yeah. I mean, come on.
Then a religious like
happy endings.
Then come on,
like, for real. But like a Christian school, that's the antithesis to that.
It's just harder to
open.
That's
the opposite.
I'm sorry, but it's harder in general to open any part.
You realize a massager isn't talking to you, bro.
I'm just saying in general. It's hard.
Nobody's racist when they're getting massages.
Ain't no racism when you're getting a massage.
It's not hard to open a massage parlor, but it is hard to open a school.
A school.
Just
Exactly.
in general, at all. That's
Yeah.
unlike in some states. No, in all states.
In all states.
In general.
It should be that way,
It's
too.
just harder to
It
open
should
a
always be that
school
way.
than it is for some person to just open up a storefront and be like, I'll touch you and make you feel better. Cool. Like,
So, since Bob Jones University just absolutely refused to admit black people until, get this, 1971, it made them ineligible for tax filing, for tax exemption under the nonprofit status. However, between 1971 and 75, they did change their policies and made it so that African American students could attend their schools, but
They
only if
just-
they were married.
okay. I was gonna say they just didn't really accept their application very like.
Well, African American students did make their way to school, but it's
They had to be married?
No, yeah, they had to be married. But hear me out. They also usually left shortly thereafter, like within a month, for reasons probably we'll never understand.
Well, yeah, no.
We'll never understand how
I mean,
why
yeah,
they would
because
leave.
well, no, it's not reasons we don't understand. It's quite fucking apparent.
It's so apparent. It's
Yeah,
like
I mean-
you attended a racist school that pretended to be
With
Christian.
your
Yeah,
wife-
you were like, yeah, let me fucking go into this. Like, oh yeah.
You're
they don't
you're
like me.
you're a black person that if you want to enroll in college have to be married and the two of you have to go to a racist school.
Yeah, it's
Not
Yeah.
like, oh, I had to deal
Oh
with
yeah,
this
I'm fucked.
by
Well-
myself. No, I had to involve another being, and then we both had to put up with this shit. Like, of course you're not gonna last long. You're like,
Well-
oh, my wife and me couldn't stand this. Why? It's hard to explain. No, it's not hard to explain.
Well, and the
Like-
evidence for that is that, like, during the same time, the school expanded their rules for interracial dating,
Uh,
meaning don't fucking do it. Like, it just you can't do it at the school. So in the
Bro, what the fuck?
so
This
so
fucking school is
if you're gonna be if you're gonna be non-white
is
to enter our
fucking
school, you have to be
ridiculous, man.
married, and if you even have anything to do with interracial relationships, which means that he used the excuse of adultery
yeah.
by already leering out that adultery will happen if you if you do that with interrace.
Yeah, and
because like
it's
it's not possible now at this college to have an interracial relationship because that's adultery.
I mean, I don't know that they made that rule, but I know that it's
No, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
He's doing. He's
it's
like,
very
well,
much so the same thing.
anybody that's not white has to be married to come here, and if you fuck somebody that's not white,
then they need to be.
then
clear.
that's
Right.
against God.
no,
and
no,
that-
you can't do that.
And they're like, well,
Oh, yeah.
isn't that
Yeah.
racist? And it's
You
like, no.
can't do that. Like that didn't happen though.
It
To be
happened
honest
a
with you,
bunch.
They're like,
oh, come
isn't
on.
that racist? He's like, no, that's adultery because all the colored people are married.
Yeah, and
And
so
it's like, whoa, dude.
So during
Whoa.
the IRS in 1976 rather retroactively issued a revocation of Bob Jones University's tax exempt status, and they did that again retroactively until 1970, and it was because they're a fucking racist school. And again, they did eventually allow African American students into the school, but they continued to be strict about the interracial dating policies. Bob Jones Jr., quote, went home to be with the Lord November 12th, 1997, end quote. So, like, again, I'm pissed off because I really wish these people...
Yeah, let me
like,
hear this quote.
Did the Bobs ever-
ran up off this fucking motherfucker?
I'm just starting to wonder.
Dude, like I don't know. I bet you this is an old senile man that's a racist bigot motherfucker.
And get it, both of the Bob Jr. and Sr. lived to be like 86 years old.
Did they ever have any daughters?
Not that I'm aware of.
That's why I'm like, God forbid they had a daughter at all, and they're like, and you're going to
yeah.
our college, but don't fuck the blacks.
Yeah.
You know,
So
it's
fuck
like,
the blacks or the Mexicans, cause
holy cow!
So,
like, wow,
the-
it'll be against God.
These really racist rules remained school policy until 3 years after Jones Jr. died. In the year 2000, George W. Bush visited the university to give a speech during his campaign for president. In his speech, he made no mention of the discriminatory practices of the school, and the nation's critics were furious. He was quickly criticized for not having condemned the ban on interracial dating, and he was subsequently slammed so hard that he, from the Washington Post here, quote, apologized the day after for having spoke at Bob Jones University without, and this is a quote of him, dissociating myself from the anti-Catholic sentiments and racial prejudices of the fundamentalist college and its leaders, end quote. So I like that the Catholics come first. He's like, I'm sorry we offended Catholics. Oh, and the black people too. Pretty cool. However, interracial dating stayed an issue until the school's policy until the mid 2000s. Bob Jones the fucking third, his son Stephen Jones, took the title of president in 2005, and I'm just really glad that it's a Stephen Jones and not another fucking Bob. I got so tired of the Bobs in this episode. 3 years later, the school's then president Steve Pettit sought to reinstate the school's tax exempt status, having stated the school's policy on race have changed. He's quoted in the Greenville News, from where the university sits, they reported this in 2017 and used the exact same verse for the integration as Bob Jones Sr. had used for segregation.
Are you fucking serious?
The Greenville News here. Quote, "The Bible is very clear," Pettit said as he announced the change to the university Wednesday night. "We are made of one blood." And I think that's really important that he kind of, they don't get any brownie points for not being racist in 2000. That's a good fucking quote, though.
Well, that's some fucking ridiculous ass shit, though, to be honest with you.
So, this racist and bigoted college still exists. And it's just such... we're going to get into this next section here in a minute, because this is my favorite part of this episode.
I need to go cut.
Yeah.
So, Marcus, how are you feeling about this episode? How do you feel about Bob Jones
All right,
University?
Marcus, we're paying for your tuition to join this college, and then people getting cut. I mean, wait.
Pretty cool.
I don't understand how anyone from any fucking race besides white culture could actually fucking be in that college.
I think it was okay.
Yeah, I would fucking cut a motherfucker real quick for that shit. That shit
Shawn,
was ridiculous.
How are you feeling here? Feel good?
Like Bart Simpson wants to take down the man.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel. I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but somehow it's gonna work out. I'm gonna fall down a couple cliffs, watch my dad do some stupid shit to save me, and then for some odd reason at the end of the episode,
Start hucking bricks at a church.
The church explodes into fiery flames. I don't know. It's like, whoa, okay,
I don't know. That sounds great to me, to be honest with you. Because if it wasn't Bart Simpsons or the Simpsons, it would be the cartel.
Or just the sheer wrath of God, if you will. You want to go that direction. It's like, I feel like at some point or another, there's just going to be a smite that's going to happen. That's like, and flames. The burning bush is this university.
Yeah.
And
it's fucking ridiculous, bro. Like,
and it's gonna get more ridiculous after this break.
No, I don't like, honestly, that's not a fucking surprise to me.
It's gonna be so much fun.
Fucking
I'm very excited.
Maybe I made a bad call.
I'm glad that you've got a chemical buffer, Marcus, because it's gonna get bad.
Oh, I know it is.
So-
I know it is, bro.
so-
It's just like, ah!
So we're gonna have ourselves a short break, and we're gonna come back after this. You guys at home, if you haven't been doing so, drink some water.
Drink some tequila.
Drink some water after
No,
your tequila.
but from Q, drink some tequila.
Drink some tequila. Not Q though. That's QAnon.
No, that's me. I'm
Mark-
Q.
from Mark
I'm the
Q.
Q, nigga. The Q, right?
You're Q. Anyway, we'll see you guys on the other side.
Yeah.
At the cutting edge of drinking technology is the sugar straw. Minimize your yearly waste and reduce your carbon footprint by drinking from the sugar straw. It makes every drink taste great. I've been drinking wine through it at home, and I like that it gets really sticky and stays stuck to the side of the glass. It also makes wine more palatable by adding just like a little lovely hint of sugar. Go out and get your sugar straws wherever you purchase straw alternatives.
Better water is wetter water.
Better waters is wetter water, water wetter.
Wets your water, whether better water wets your...
Washer with better water with our clever water.
It's wetter water. Any better water, wetter water competitor.
Could never endeavor to do better.
Clever Forever is our water wetter.
The standard setter to the letter.
Better water, wetter water is for potters.
Safer otters.
It's water for the slaughter.
Or to wash your baby daughters.
Good for lobsters.
Wetter water than our imposters.
Better waters is wetter, water, wetter.
And we are back.
All the way back.
All the way back. And we are having a good time out of studio, off mic. And I think, honestly, I would argue just as good of a time on mic. How are you guys feeling about tonight before we dive back into this?
I mean,
terrible story.
It's definitely something that I was not expecting here when I came here today.
Do you have any...
But I mean, honestly, it's refreshing.
Hell yeah.
It's refreshing to actually like speak about real shit that's apparently still fucking going on.
Still going on.
That's, you know, I mean, you learn something every day, and that's just how
it makes some things make sense. Where I was like kind of blown away about some things on the ballot this year for voting, and I'm like, how is this still a thing? And it's like, well, how is Bob Jones University still a thing?
Apparently,
why are we
very
still voting
still
on certain things? And it's like, apparently we're still trying to figure this out. I thought we covered it years ago.
I thought it was
like that. I thought we made amendments and constitutional things and all this stuff, and we're like, cool, that's history that I read about.
Bro, but
and we teach our...
Hold on, a small anecdote.
Right, what you're actually saying. And that's what I fucking love, that you're actually... We thought we were...
Bro,
racially...
Marcus,
actually there.
Until I was 12, I thought racism was dead. I thought it was a dying thing.
I thought that was like cool.
When I was 12, I saw somebody say white power.
I'm 28 years old, and I can tell you myself that racism is so
prevalent,
fucking alive.
You know, and as white people, me and Shawn, we never got to realize that until we saw the first person who is our 12-year-old friend be like, yeah, I think whites are better than black people. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I thought that was not a thing.
Why are we doing this?
I thought we quit doing that.
Have you guys actually seen this? I don't know. It's something that's going like on social media and right now and all this shit. But they actually will go to fucking like toddlers, like 4 to maybe like 7 years old, and they'll show them 2 different dolls. They'll show them the white doll and they'll show them the black doll, and every single time, no matter what, it's always a white doll. And they say white because it doesn't look as scary.
God damn, we're gonna have to.
And I'm like, whoa! These are black children that are already manipulated at this fucking age to know that they see a white doll versus a black doll as no, the black doll is more scary.
Yeah, and I would love to get into that. Like, I think that kind of research is fascinating.
I felt fear,
but I don't know that I can.
Half a second of silence that just happened.
Yeah, I don't know enough about that in order to have an opinion about it. Because it sounds like it could be a hoax, which we're going to kind of get into.
And of course, you're 100% right.
Yeah,
it could be a hoax.
But honestly, I think it seems reasonable. Like I can understand why that would happen.
Actual.
I myself just want to see the research itself, because I think that's a very interesting point. Because for various reasons, it's you know, being white has been kind of idolized, and it's been, people have been brought up to think that that's the pinnacle of beauty, and that's not the case at all. And so,
you know what's funny is I grew up in El Paso, Texas. So if you were to grow up in El Paso, Texas, it's like the complete opposite. It's from what you're saying, like the white culture has nothing there.
Yeah,
absolutely nothing. They're completely squashed down by the Mexican culture in that. No, I'm not.
No, yeah.
I mean,
let's get it.
I'm not bullshitting at all.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Yeah, and like, I don't know enough to talk about that. It's interesting research that I would love to talk about, because I'm sure that that's the truth, but I don't have enough information to say that is the truth. But what I can say is I did a shitload of research for the following script that I wrote. So, this racist, bigoted Bob James University College still fucking exists.
No.
And you guys...
It can't. No, I'm going to keep coughing. It doesn't. You're blasphemy. It does not still exist.
It does still exist. And I want you guys to know that it's allowing a diverse type of students, although their reputation may remain tarnished. So, data collected by Data USA has shown us the total number of students that attended in 2017. And that was around somewhere near 2,380.
It creeps me out that somebody went to a college and they were like, hey, what are you doing here? You're like, just marking down your color.
I mean, I'm sure. I'm sure that it comes with the application.
I'm just
like the application to get
but
into
still,
college.
there's just like some random dude that's like,
No,
can we
and
throw
I
a statistic
hear
on your application? We won't put their name
Well, not
in.
for nothing. This is Bob Jones University. Somebody should be there to do this.
Yeah, for sure.
Honestly, really think about it.
It's just like that one creepy dude,
how
you know,
culture
like
has grown throughout these days. I guarantee you, someone saw that as an opportunity to be like, "Hey, look, I went to one of the most racist colleges.
Schools, yeah.
And it was like, are you guys gonna accept me?" And they accepted me. And at that same time, I was trying to fucking, spread a different message. But
I'm just
you're in an area.
Well, the interesting thing about attending college here is something we're actually going to get into here.
I'm just getting at that, like, and I won't cut you off too much further here, but I love that there's like, hey, buddy, I'm going to start a school, or I'm going to be doing this, and he had a friend or whatever that's like, hey, can I analyze that? And you're like, wait, what?
No,
do your thing. I just want to film it. I just want to write down.
No. Again, this is a consensus. I'm sure that this is a consensus data.
Like, oh, hey, homie, you gotta. Oh, I'm gonna make this an actual school.
Well, this is the consensus data that's coming from like I'm sure the person who's in charge of administration and that kind of thing. Somebody was given the job to look through and just kind of catalog, and maybe they didn't do that. Maybe it was just automatically cataloged, because when you file applications for a lot of things, they ask you what your ethnicity is.
Yeah.
And so I want to think that this is where they're getting their data from. I don't know actually enough about Data USA to say anything about this, but I do want to share some data with you guys real quick, because I think it's very interesting. From Data USA's website of Bob Jones University in 2017, quote, the enrolled student population at Bob Jones University is 73.4% white, 5.59% Hispanic or Latino, 2.7% two or more races, 1.99% Black or African American, 1.7% Asian, 0.412 Native, Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders, and 0.343% Native American or Alaskan Native. This includes both full-time and part-time students, as well as graduate and undergraduates.
I like that the tail end of that was like, there was a few people that were questionable how native they were.
There was like one Native person.
But no, but his dad was full Native, and he may or his grandfather.
Well, no, I'm not going to argue about that because
like some guy was analyzing the statistic of how do you do the math of how much of a percentage of Native you are.
I think that's
that you go here.
No, I think that's incorrect actually, because what it's asking about 2,380 students roughly, and so it sounds like there's like one student that's Native American.
That's what I'm getting at, yeah.
But it's not about like, how. But hear me out. It's not a percentage of how Native is he. This is a Native American.
I guess what I was getting at is the last two things you said were based on Native things. So there was more or less two students out at the college, and they were debating on who was more Native where, and they were like, "We don't know what to do, so we're just gonna say this."
And
it's like, damn, dude, you went so racist so far down that it makes no difference. And like, there was literally 2 students that were like, "But I'm native," and you're like, East Coast, West Coast.
Yeah. And
Like,
so
does it make a difference?
I want to continue this quote from Data USA real quick. Quote, by comparison, enrollment for all master's colleges and universities, and that's like Carnegie Mellon University, Harvard, Johns Hopkins, things like that, is 54.4% white, 15% Hispanic or Latino, and 13.2% Black or African American.
Okay.
So there's like 2%, less than 2% African Americans at Bob Jones during
Like at the average place, it's usually like this.
They got all those fucking Spaniards from fucking.
It looks
and
like
any other college has like a 13.2%.
Like your numbers don't add up, bro.
It doesn't make sense.
I don't know how to say it, but your statistics are very leaning towards something else. Can I make any more obvious examples?
Yeah.
Literally, your numbers don't add up.
Your numbers don't add up. It's crazy. And so they seem to be in 2017, at least not as racist, question mark.
Well,
But I think the real important thing about the school is that this university gave out diplomas, but they basically weren't real. See, the school would let you graduate and give you a diploma, but the diplomas meant little in the collegiate world because Bob Jones University wasn't accredited until 2017. I want to pause for a minute. I think Marcus should come back in and hear that.
Is first the obvious example.
I think we should pause for a minute and reread that when he comes back in.
Oh, we'll do it. He's coming back in.
Yeah, because.
And I'm gonna. Okay. Oh. You good with now? Don't quiet that door.
Yeah, and I
We're waiting for you. Get back in here. Sit down. We gotta reread.
We need you to come in and sit down and listen.
I have a retort to make that you got to be involved.
Well, let me read him the
Let's
line.
just point out that our co-host had to go take a piss because the alcohol.
Yeah. I had to take a leak. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So let me read you something, Marcus. Bob Jones University seems to be in 2017 at least is not as racist, question mark. But I think the real important thing about the school is that this university gave out diplomas, but they basically weren't real. See, the school would let you graduate and give you a diploma, but the diplomas meant little in the collegiate world because Bob Jones University wasn't accredited until 2017. 2017, 90 years after their creation.
So this is where I wanted to bring up 2 things.
Marcus.
So for a long period of time.
So you telling me that people was just stupid as fuck?
And they were getting fake diplomas the whole time.
You're like, yeah, I'm like the best, smartest person in the world because this dumb motherfucker told me I was. And
so what I want to get at is that for a long period of time, you could spend money at a college and to get a degree that meant nothing. And that sucks. Just the general.
Oh, so you're
just
talking
the general
about
thing.
right now?
No, hold on. That's the second part I'm getting at. Is that the point is that they did get accredited. After so long of such bullshit, they were finally, now you can.
Now they're finally not being
and the fact that it's accredited
outwardly.
now.
Yeah.
This is now an accredited college. Which is blast. And
you could attend Harvard and then transfer your credits to this college.
Yeah.
After 90?
After 90 years?
Nah, I don't even give a fuck if it's 96.
It's like 89,
After
90 years.
Fucking 90 fucking years that this was a college.
It's crazy.
Like, turns out this was all bullshit, but now you can apply it.
But you were.
It's still bullshit.
In 2017, even though you're still a racist, bigoted, fucking ignorant fucking college. It has the same ideals from the actual initial start.
Oh, yeah. And
we're still gonna give you an accreditation.
And it's gonna get worse.
Fucking serious.
Bro, I promise you, tonight is gonna get worse.
That's the American. That's the American thing, though. Apparently, if you spend 90 years trying to prove your point, apparently after that much time, America's like, you know what? Fuck it.
Yeah.
If it's your thing,
shut your fucking mark ass up. I will gonna give you this thing. Right?
fuck it.
Yeah.
All right, take it where you want. Let's see where it goes because
But
I can't deal with
you
the
guys- you
arguments
guys, you
anymore.
gotta-
It's 90 years of
You
arguments.
got to remember, in the 21st century, they finally caught up with the 20th century in that they started allowing black people.
Bro.
Hell yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
I grew up from El Paso where there's not even fucking real racist shit. There's still racist shit going on.
There's so much racist
They're
shit.
like-
so
it's
like, well,
ridiculous,
so-
bro. It's like, oh my god. I'm
So
sorry.
it's all right. So getting back to the script, jointcommission.org says that accreditation, quote, provides a framework for organizational structure and management. Accreditation involves preparing for a survey and maintaining a high level of quality and compliance with the latest standards, end quote. So the reason it's so important to understand accreditation is because it helps lend itself to the authenticity. Like there's a standard there by which people are held as they teach, they learn, they graduate into their field of their studies. And it's good that the faculty really put the focus on put the focus on the part that includes God. A lot of different types of people have graduated the school and started various types of careers. A lot of them in the industry of faith. In the church. One of these graduates is actually Dale Mensing, and he is currently, as of this writing, on the ballot for California's 2nd Congressional District seat. According to Ballotpedia, quote, Dale Mensing graduated from Bob Jones Academy in 1976. He later attended Bob Jones University for 2 years. From 1979 to 1983, he served in the Navy as a neuropsychiatric technician in the Navy's Hospital Corps. Mensing then became a medical courier. But you guys want to know who else graduated from the Bob Jones University?
Did he do lobotomies? Like, what the fuck?
I don't know what he did, honestly.
Graduated from Bob Jones University.
You guys want to know who else graduated from Bob
Might
Jones
as well
University?
roll with it now.
It's a guy named John Weaver. I expect you guys to have never heard of this guy. But he's actually a very important part of one of the other stories we've told here on the podcast. Sean, can you guess which episode you played an important part in?
I cannot.
All right, so we're gonna get into John Weaver. John Weaver, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, he has a webpage they have a webpage about John Weaver where they describe him as a graduate of Bob Jones University. He's also the pastor of Freedom Baptist Ministries based in Fitzgerald, Florida. He still has an active page on Facebook called Freedom Ministries, Pastor John Weaver. He's also been associated with various hate groups, such as like the Sons of Confederate Veterans. He's also fairly wanted in the white extremist circuit. And by wanted, I really want to emphasize that they want him to speak. According to SPLC, quote, in March 2007, for instance, he spoke for 5 nights at Southern Point Baptist Church in Pelzer, South Carolina, at a conference sponsored by Christian Exodus. That group was working to get Christians in South Carolina to secede and was led by Corey Burnell, himself a former member of the League of the South, a neo-secessionist hate group. Drink real quick. John Weaver is the quintessential Southern preacher, bringing the whole counsel of God with practical application to every area of life, Burnell said at the time. He teaches the biblical doctrine of interposition as well as any man, and brings powerful illustrations from American history with touching stories from the First and Second Wars for American independence. And this is all the Southern Poverty Law Center. Quote, this has all been, quote, regardless of whether or not interposition is biblical, it is doctrine that was used by racist Southern state governments to defend slavery and later to try to nullify laws and court rulings against segregation. It is also one that the courts have repeatedly ruled unconstitutional. In April 2007, Weaver, our John Weaver here, made an appearance on The Political Cesspool, a racist radio program run by James Edwards out of Memphis, Tennessee, that has featured the veritable who's who of the radical right. On the show, they have included former Klan leaders, Holocaust deniers, neo-Nazis, and fellow travelers. Weaver has also taken up arms in a big way. Our John Weaver that we're still talking about. He recently became a certified instructor for Front Sight, a firearms training institute at Georgia's League of the South meeting in March 2011. He taught members to draw down on an enemy. He taught gun safety at the LOS National Convention last July. And that was again by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, John Weaver is, in order to kind of weave this story, if you will, into something else, he's more well known for having helped a little guy who's been on the show before, Dylan Roof. If you go back and listen to our episode about Dylan Roof, you'll remember that he was radicalized after seeing the events in Ferguson. After watching the news and hearing about all the violence that was happening in black communities, Dylan was curious about it. Going online, Dylan, as he claims, typed black on black crime and then immediately found a website called Council for Conservative Citizens, a website run by a John Weaver. After finding the CCC, Dylan Roof began to radicalize himself at home, where after a year or so he made a plan, went to the Charleston Church in South Carolina and murdered 9, wounding another and traumatizing a few other survivors. These were all black people, by the way. And it's like, not all churches teach extremism, and John Weaver, like the John Weavers of the world, are just small percentages of people that graduate from these kind of schools. And these kind of schools, I mean, are extremist factories. Obviously, Bob Jones started as a racist, bigoted, anti-modernist organization, hell-bent on what they probably thought as re-Christianizing America. But it became so bad that Jones III, in 2015, had to apologize for having said that gays should be stoned to death, and whether or not you believe him, he offers this statement, quote, "I take personally ownership of this inflammatory rhetoric. This reckless statement was made in the heat of political controversy 35 years ago. It is antithetical to my theology and my 50 years of preaching as redeeming Christ who came upon the world, not to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. Upon now reading these long-forgotten words, they seem to me as words belonging to a total stranger were my name not attached. I cannot erase them, but I wish I could, because they do not represent the belief of my heart or the content of my preaching. Neither before nor since that event in 1980 have I ever advocated the stoning of sinners." End quote. For the record, I don't fucking believe him. I think he's probably said that shit before and after, but
he's learning the game.
Pretty rough.
It's
The story, and to be fair, I understand that there's like a tenuous connection between Dylan Roof and Bob Jones University, but I think the reason it's important to talk about it is that there are rough. Jesus Christ. The reason I think it's important to talk about these kinds of things is because these types of places, these fundamentalist institutions that masquerade as academia, they reach their tendrils and their rotten roots far and wide into society. Places like Bob Jones University were, more or less, safe places in which to preach hate into the echo chamber. These were places that rationalized the dehumanization of others, and they do so with quaint, kind smiles that feel like your neighbor sitting at his vegetable stand, waving at you as you drive by. And that same rural American dirt road, family garden familiarity gets built into how these schools operate. Just listen to the way that Bob Jones Academy bills itself while it describes what it does. Mind you, the Bob Jones Academy is, I'm just going to read it. Bob Jones Academy provides
from a college to university to a academy.
Bob Jones Academy provides a learning environment for a community of like-minded students, all under a nurturing faculty who teach from a biblical worldview while demonstrating Christ-like character. We challenge our students to succeed by providing high-quality academics and encouraging personal excellence. It is our goal to develop fully prepared and matured college-bound graduates who love God with all their heart. Bob Jones Academy serves students in the grades of K3, which is 3-year-olds, through 12th grade. and provides early education for children from birth to age 2. So
Yeah,
I wonder
naturally.
why the academy wants college-bound graduates. It's fucking weird.
That's
This whole story it was so uncomfortable to write.
I don't think it's really weird though. And if you really think about it, why wouldn't they want to continue to keep them out of the loop
Yeah,
into college?
that's exactly what they're doing. Keeping them out of the loop.
start from the beginning, go to the end.
Yep. And it makes it easier that way too, because
Well, yeah,
now you don't have to
everything
teach
you've ever
evolution.
learned where you're
Now you
just
can
a
teach
first
that
year
dancing isn't a
learner
fucking
knowledge.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The blues will steal your soul.
Yeah, so Bob Jones University may actually provide a layer of insulation for a lot of these radicalized mindsets by using religion as a way to wage their holy war, not just against the sinners, fornicators, heretics, and blasphemers, but even against other fucking followers of Christ. They provide religious applications for their racism, as we've seen. The idea is that if racism is scriptural, they cannot be wrong for doing it if it's the word of God. Some of these same people weaponize religion, who weaponize religion, radicalize groups against perceived threats, and the threats are growing. Think about the people in Oregon who were detained, and I'm pretty sure zip tied, and these guys were members of the press who were reporting on fires. And the people who did this saw them as anti-American, anti-Christian, Antifa members. It's fucking weird. And Bob Jones, I think, recognizes how closely linked it has been to the rancid, spoiling underbelly that is their racist and sexist version of religion. I personally think that most religions are beautiful. The issue religions get into is that radicals like ISIS and the Patriot Prayer Group weaponize their beliefs, use these weapons to get their points across, and they really strip away from the true meaning of a belief in God. They also seem to conveniently forget John 13:34, quote, "A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you."
Interesting.
Yeah. And so Bob Jones University is just an example of how political idealization can be so closely linked with religious identity that they are almost inextricable from each other. Bob Jones University and Company doesn't get cool points for modernizing their fundamentalism. They don't get brownie points for not being racist, and they don't get to polish up their look by apologizing for inciting violence against the LGBTQ community. I think it's the bare minimum standard not to convey messages of hate and bigotry, especially for a school. And meeting that criteria doesn't mean that you've done well at all. The story of Bob Jones University is really just an in-depth look at how hard fundamentalists will go to dig their heels and how far they will go to preserve their little pocket of life, and how that defensiveness can be turned against entire populations of people. What's more, once these ideas have been like weaponized, once they go viral, once they become dangerous, it feels like those who preach this demagoguery, they are being silenced. Look at people like Alex Jones, Mike Adams, and like all those people. They call it censorship and the degradation of free speech, and they can call it whatever, because in the end, these beliefs further grow into institutions, and once violence becomes a part of the syllabus at a school, you've turned your weapon into a religion. Not that Bob Jones has done this, but what these demagogues preach directly influences the lives of their students, and those students go out into the world. Those students build churches and schools and careers. Those ideas get passed along. So when we see the changing stripes over at Bob Jones University, we have to look at the 9 lives lost at the Charleston Church in 2015, and Dale Mensing, current candidate for the second congressional district of California. And we have to see this as kind of a belief system that reaches far and wide and is intentionally deceptive. And it's fucking terrifying. And I think the real dangerous part of this is that these schools are still teaching, and while the university may not be...
I feel like we're actually in an era right now where we're getting to where we actually think we are. Like, we think we are so much
less racist than we used to
Yeah,
be.
we actually are.
We're
And
totally
it's
racist.
It's not anywhere at that point. So I feel like our children, maybe even our children's children, will be the ones that are actually there on that actual spectrum where color is not it's not relevant at all.
No, and it should never have been.
Yeah,
Like
but
in this university.
where we feel we honestly feel at this time and era that we're completely, oh yeah, everything's done.
No, nothing's been done.
It's nowhere even. I mean, maybe it's gone down maybe like 10-15%. But
Maybe 15%, yes, but there's
shit
so
is-
much work to still be done because,
Oh,
like,
yes.
like, if you guys ever listen to Plug Behind the Bastards, they've got a subsection called Behind the Police, and it's that podcast is strictly about how basically the police, how they formed was about white supremacy and how to keep black people in line and stuff like that, and how our nation developed. And I think it's like an 8-part series.
they
So
literally-
you guys listening at home, go ahead and check it out because it literally describes how the police have come out of a racist place.
What it is actually I have a relative that is in the police force who's actually a detective, and he's actually confirmed the actual said statement. Police do have a quota that they actually have to meet, whether they want to actually fucking tell you that or not. That is an actual factual statement. They can grab it off of the fucking actual, like, like, oh, okay, yeah, we're
It's a
just
part of
doing
their
our
job.
But yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, cool. You got to do what you have to do. That's why you always see at the end of the month, beginning of the month, cops are going at it.
Yeah. And so the real dangerous part about these kind of schools is that they're still teaching. And while the university may not be outwardly racist and bigoted anymore, I'd be willing to bet that there are groups within those universities that still foster these beliefs and provide a safe place to discuss them while keeping the appearance of having shed that fucking that skin. And these are the institutions that teach your children, your brothers, your sisters, your neighbors. These are the underhanded roots of Bob Jones University. It's not a big accomplishment that the tree that is Bob Jones University has finally begun to produce fruit that is not rotting, because it is blatantly unremarkable when the roots of the tree have poisoned the soil for decades. And
That's actually what I was trying to get at, too. What I was talking about earlier is that my relative in my family that's in law enforcement has actually stated that police force is actually basically manipulated to the point to fake, like, hey, where our business is with minorities.
Mm-hmm.
So target that.
Yeah, and disproportionately, those are the amount of people that are also in prison. Like, they make up a huge portion of the people in prison, and in different areas, smaller percentages of the people in the population. And so it's very blatant and it's disgusting. And so what I do want to leave our listeners with is I want to touch on some information from the FBI. And they call white nationalism and white supremacy one of the biggest domestic terror threats. FBI.gov has a header at the top of their website saying, quote, "Don't be a puppet." And when you open the link entitled, "What are known violent extremist groups?" on that list, you'll find, the kind of people you'd expect to. You got like ISIS and ISIL, Al-Qaeda. But they also include groups like sovereign citizens, militia members, and white supremacy extremists. And this is because of the rapid rise in right-wing extremism, partially fostered by the nurturing nature of Bob Jones University's past. In an article written by Politico, it discusses 3 different versions of the same document written by the FBI. It was leaked to them. And they all vary slightly, but it was something that, again, was leaked to them. And these documents read in part as follows, quote, "White supremacists present the gravest danger to the United States according to a draft report from the Department of Homeland Security," they said in their article. Foreign terrorist organizations will continue to call for homeland attacks, but probably will remain constrained in their ability to direct such plots over the next year, all three documents say. And this is the part that I feel is the most pertinent, because I think that there is a insidious plot to really change people from being on each other's side to a civil war in the United States. Again, from that same from the same Politico article, quote, Russia, quote, probably will be the primary covert foreign intelligence actor and purveyor of disinformation and misinformation in the homeland, the documents also say, end quote. And these sources of misinformation love stirring the racist shitpot that is white supremacy in the United States. And it's crazy to think that white supremacy in the United States has been created by partially people in Russia. Maybe not their government, but people in Russia. And so ends our fucked up story of Bob Jones Sr., the second, a third, and their shitty white supremacist university.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty cool. How do you feel about tonight, Marcus?
It was definitely a turn from what I thought what the subject was gonna be, but I mean, it was interesting. Like I definitely learned listening to all this, and it's definitely interesting to hear other people's aspects, even though that shit was Hitlery as fuck.
Very Hitlery.
Yeah, that shit.
Shawn, how do you feel about tonight? How's this story made you? You gonna sleep well tonight?
I mean, I would sleep well if I can, but it's very interesting that the more and more we point out things that are of relevant past of 100 years ago are still like relevant today.
Yeah.
And it kind of boggles me, to be honest, where I'm like, yo, really? Like, I thought this was shit that I went to school for, that we learned about, that was like, we're over this, and it's still a thing. And it's just like
up
dude,
until
seriously?
2000s, they didn't allow black people.
Is this why
like,
history
goddamn.
teachers tell us all the time? The past repeats itself.
Um,
Are we not supposed to learn?
I think so. I don't know that this specific instance is the past repeats itself, but I know a lot of things, like a lot of universities took the same path as at the same time. Like, yeah, it's just a fucking wild story.
So I'm gonna join tomorrow and destroy the
Cool.
Bob Jones system.
Great. Might not be a good idea to get a recording of that on a podcast.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, I just think.
Or the best idea to get a recording. of
and
it.
what
I don't
might
know.
also
It's-
not be a good idea to say on a podcast is
like-
if you need grenades, I know where to get them.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll start with. we'll go with that and then see where it goes.
We'll see where it
Alright.
goes. We'll get a cease and desist from
Yeah.
the military
Yeah.
now. So, this has been a long episode, very shitty episode, and I feel very uncomfortable leaving you guys with this. But I do want to ask, since we're at the end of the episode, do you guys want to plug anything? You guys want to talk about where people can find you on the internet?
I mean, check out Black Sheep and Bad Apples at Fourth Corner.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, neither do I.
Okay.
But you can check out Fourth Corner on Facebook. Check out Black Sheep and Bad Apples on YouTube. And keep joining in.
Keep trying.
And
man.
if y'all want to get up on some fresh gear, show a little bit of your alpha omega side, check out Bull Mode Apparel on Facebook and Instagram. And
What's the name? Bull Mode?
Bull Mode Apparel.
Bull Mode, baby.
Yeah, we a little Texas, so we had to throw a little, omega simple into a bull,
Yeah, and you can find me online on Facebook at Black Sheep and Bad Apples. And also, I created a Twitter to make fun of various people who are celebrities.
Nice.
And you can find me at Big Umbrella Hug, all one word, on Facebook, or rather Twitter. So how did you guys feel episode episode 1 of the 6th season went? Do you guys feel pissed off and a little bit angry? A little.
Looks
I
like
don't know.
we're
It was. Honestly, it was just really like a nice, knowledgeable.
Good time.
I mean, it pissed me off a little
Yeah,
bit. I'm not gonna lie.
definitely.
It was like, wow, that's. I mean, it's nothing surprising. It's.
Yeah, and so
Life is bigoted and fucking.
and it's still
crazy
around.
fucking place, bro. It's-
Yeah, and so if you guys at home do want to send any kind of ideas our way or want us to cover certain topics, please let us know at our various handles.
Sasquatch.
This has been this has been Black Sheep and Bad Apples. I'm Lauren O'Brien. Thank you, Mr. Sean Hill, producer man.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, and Marcus.
Yeah, you know.
Thank you, doggy.
I don't know. It just goes.
Hey, I think you're cute too.
Oh.
Black sheep
You
and
guys
bad
can't see
apples.
that shit, but I licked my lips at him.
This guy over here is fucking dirty.
Check
Good night,
us out
guys.
on the West Coast. Good night and good luck.
Good luck.